Welcome to the Masterclass, everyone. I'm Dr. Cam, and today we're going to demystify the absolute universal language of nature, chemical equations. Think about it for a second. Every single change happening around you right now, from the breath you just took to the screen you're staring at, it's all governed by interactions at the atomic level. And how do we document that? Well, we write it down using a very specific, incredibly elegant language. So in this explainer, we're going to learn exactly how to read, write, and perfectly balance that language. Let's get into it.
Here's a quick look at our syllabus for today's explainer. We're going to cover the language of chemistry, the anatomy of an equation, the law of conservation of mass, balancing step by step, and finally, the types of chemical reactions.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the language of chemistry, building the words.
Okay, so before we can write a full chemical sentence, we actually have to know how to spell our words, right? Notice how we have to figure out exactly what kind of bond we're dealing with first. Is it a covalent compound made entirely of nonmetals? If it is, we use Greek prefixes in the name to tell us the subscripts. Like the di in carbon disulfide, telling us there are 2 sulfur atoms. But what if it's an ionic compound, involving metals that lose electrons and nonmetals that gain them? Well, if it's ionic, we actually toss the prefixes out the window. Instead, we have to play detective a bit and deduce the ratio by balancing the positive and negative charges of the ions until the total charge hits 0, using subscripts to lock in that ratio. Honestly, this is the foundational grammar we absolutely have to master before we can move on.
Moving right along to Section 2, Anatomy of an Equation, the Chemical Sentence.
Now that we can spell our chemical words, we get to use them to build a highly logical sentence. Look, every process has a beginning, and in chemistry, we call these the reactants. These are the starting materials of your reaction. And just like reading a book in English, we always write them on the left-hand side of our equation. Think of this like cooking. Your reactants, they're the raw ingredients you pull out of your pantry before you even think about turning on the stove.
And then on the flip side, we have our products. These are the resulting substances you get at the very end of the reaction, and we write these over on the right-hand side. Going back to our cooking analogy, the products are the final dish you pull out of the oven. They are completely transformed from what you started with. So, what separates the pantry from the oven? The yield arrow. Now, this is crucial. This arrow acts as the verb in our chemical sentence. It doesn't just mean equals, no. It shows us exactly where the chemical change is headed, pointing directly from those reactants toward the products. And hey, sometimes you might even see arrows pointing in both directions. That just tells us the reaction is at equilibrium, constantly moving back and forth like a microscopic tug-of-war.
But, our verb can actually be modified. Sometimes we need to add adverbs to our sentence to give the reader a little more context. We write these reaction conditions right above that yield arrow. For example, if a reaction needs a platinum catalyst to get going, we'll literally just write PT over the arrow. If it requires heat, you're going to see a capital Greek delta symbol. It looks just like a little triangle. Or if it requires light to trigger, kind of like the decomposition of hydrogen peroxide, you'll see the expression H-nu. This tells anyone reading it exactly how the reaction is carried out in the lab.
Oh, and just as important as the conditions are the states of matter. We write these in little parentheses right next to the chemical formulas. We use S for solid, G for gas, L for liquid, and AQ for aqueous, which basically just means dissolved in water. And guys, we must always include these because the physical difference is massive. Seriously, take aqueous iron versus liquid iron. Aqueous iron, it's literally just a rusty water mixture. But liquid iron, that's molten metal sitting at a scorching 2,800 degrees Fahrenheit. Confusing an aqueous solution for a liquid state could quite literally be deadly in a lab setting. So yeah, states of matter, absolutely crucial. Okay, let's jump into Section 3, Law of Conservation of Mass, the grammar of the universe.
This right here is the absolute unbreakable grammatical rule of chemistry. Matter cannot be created nor destroyed. None of the atoms just disappear into the void during a reaction, and there's no way new atoms magically appear out of nowhere. They simply break their bonds and rearrange themselves to form completely new chemical compounds. Because of this, the exact total mass of your reactants absolutely must equal the total mass of your products. This sets the sticks for why our equations have to be perfectly balanced. An unbalanced equation? It's a lie. It literally violates the laws of physics.
Which brings us to Section 4, Balancing Step by Step, the accountant technique. I actually love this part because balancing an equation is basically a highly satisfying logic puzzle.
We're going to put on our accountant hats and balance the ledger using a really structured three-step process laid out by chemistry experts. Step 1, we write the skeletal unbalanced equation. Step 2, we balance it by adding coefficients. Those are the big numbers in front of the molecules. And please, hear me clearly on this. Actually, scratch that. Burn this into your brain. Do not change the little subscript numbers. If you change a subscript, you literally change the chemical identity of the substance, completely ruining your spelling from step 1. And finally, step 3, we lock it all in by indicating our physical states of matter.
So, let's look at this unbalanced puzzle for producing ammonia gas. We start with nitrogen gas plus hydrogen gas yielding ammonia. Do you notice the problem here? We have 2 nitrogen atoms on the left side of the arrow, but only 1 nitrogen atom on the right side, hiding inside that NH3 molecule. As we just learned, the universe does not allow a nitrogen atom to just vanish.
So we step in as the accountant to get the reactant side and the product side to match perfectly. If we place a big coefficient of 2 in front of the ammonia product, boom, we fix our nitrogen issue. That gives us 2 nitrogens on the right, but wait, remember that coefficient multiplies everything in the molecule, meaning we now have 2 times 3, so 6 hydrogen atoms on the right. To balance the left side, we just place a coefficient of 3 in front of the H2 reactant. 3 times 2 gives us 6 hydrogens. And just like that, our ledger balances perfectly. 2 nitrogens and 6 hydrogens on both sides of the arrow.
And there is our beautifully finished sentence. We've got our correct formulas, our lowest possible whole number coefficients of 1, 3, and 2, and we've added our gaseous states of matter, which you can see indicated by the little g in parentheses. The law of conservation of mass is satisfied, and the chemistry is perfectly sound.
Finally, we arrive at section 5, types of chemical reactions, the genres. Just like movies have genres, chemical sentences fall into some very specific categories. In a combination reaction, 2 simple substances join to form a single complex one, kind of like 2 characters falling in love. Decomposition is the exact opposite. A single compound breaks apart into simpler substances, usually requiring energy like heat or light to make it happen. Then you've got displacement, where a more active element kicks a less active one out of a compound and just steals its partner. Double displacement, that's a complete partner swap between 2 compounds, which often forms a solid precipitate that drops right out of the solution. And combustion? Well, that's your action movie. A substance reacts rapidly with oxygen gas, usually releasing a massive amount of heat and light. Once you can identify these core patterns, you can literally read the story of the reaction at a single glance.
You see, chemistry isn't just something that happens on a chalkboard or hidden away inside a beaker. It is literally the operating system of our physical universe. So now that you know how to read and write the language of nature, I've got a challenge for you. I want you to look at the world around you differently. Next time you see a car rusting out in a field or watch a loaf of bread rise in the oven, don't just look past it. Stop and wonder to yourself what incredible, perfectly balanced chemical sentences are being written right before your eyes. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and remember to keep questioning the world around you.